Ubisoft's agonizing and not so slow collapse is really teetering on the edge right now. They are hanging by a thread. Their stock prices have collapsed over the last 6 years, they are not hitting their internal targets, and some of their biggest investments like Star Wars Outlaws are underperforming, and their other biggest investments are needing to be delayed, like Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is being delayed because it's unpolished and, from reports, unfinished, missing major implementations of features, and I personally don't think, from what we've heard, that it will even make its February 14th release date. It's so bad that we've gotten to the point that there is an active conversation happening about the Guillemot family, the original founders, combined with Tencent, buying the company out and taking it private in an attempt to save it. And that would come with a lot of very big changes. Really, the overall image of Ubisoft right now, for a company with 18,000 employees, for one of the biggest video game companies in the world, is one of absolute chaos, a level that is unprecedented. We have situations like the vice president of Rainbow Six, the person in charge for the long-term growth of the brand, leaving, with internal communications indicating that they are not looking for a replacement anytime soon, which in other words means they're looking for bigger restructuring, which is why this is not something they want to do, because they're just going to fold it into all of the bigger changes that they need to do. But this also comes with some conflicting reports of things like the Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag remake actually coming out next November, along with a total of 10 Assassin's Creed titles ready to launch in the next 5 years, meaning that Ubisoft still is holding on to this idea that what they need is more output, instead of focusing on the very public fact that their development, that their pipeline is suffering tremendously when it comes to quality control and actually putting out good games. It is actually hilarious that they think that they just need more games, that like quality is not even a word to them at this point. But there's also reports of Ubisoft aware of the potential buyout, saying that they review every strategic possibility in order to please their stakeholders, and that right now they're laser focused on open world adventures and games as a service. It's like they keep forgetting that they made this game where this one guy came up to you and was like,
"Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is?"
You can't make this up. And on top of all of this, we have Ubisoft employees, like the viral post from the director of monetization over on LinkedIn, crying about how unfair everything is. So there is a lot to cover about what the future of Ubisoft might be, about what we can expect from it, and what the possibilities are, as well as me answering that very viral post, because it deserves to be answered and called out for how manipulative it is. It's a pretty big video. And hi, I'm Mug. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoy this, if you find it informative, if you find it entertaining, because that helps the channel reach more people, helps it grow. Let's get into all of this. Now, the first thing that I really want to remind you of is that Ubisoft has dug their own grave. They are here in this situation because they deserve it. They've made many mistakes as a company, be that growing way too fast and overestimating how much they could grow, be that how they are a public company and that chase for profit has led them to situations where they continue to implement some of the worst practices in the business. Single-player battle passes, early access, manipulative season passes, a terrible subscription service, forcing people to use their own proprietary launcher, their DRM, their always online, their lack of care for game preservation, and their overall disregard for just customers in general, as they chase more and more monetization schemes. The way that they don't innovate, and a lot of their games feel like they're just reskinning the same basic concepts and expecting people to play it while overhyping their games and selling people on hope, and the overall hubris and mentality that they are too big to fail. They are really at this point the perfect example of what not to do. They are a blueprint of how to tank a giant company. And that is why it is so important that we talk about them, because there's a lot of lessons to be learned here in how to mismanage something and end up in a situation where everybody hates you. So before we jump into what to expect from the future of Ubisoft, I want to really address why we need to keep talking about them and why it's good for people to want them to fail, because that is wanting them to change. And for that, I need to address this semi-viral post from the monetization director, which I've censored the name, but this image has been all over the place at this point. Now, this person says, "I rarely post on social media, but today I am sad, ashamed, and sad. The gaming industry is rough at the moment, we all know it, but seeing how gamers, in quotation marks, react on social medias wishing ill fate to companies and people alike is sad. And not only towards Ubisoft. Even though it is always the vocal minority that express themselves on social media, I was hurt and ashamed to be a part of this community. Which, this is really good, because it's the first time that we're on the same page with some of these directors, because we are also hurt and ashamed that they are part of this community. Now, this idea that it's a vocal minority is one of the biggest problems within a company like Ubisoft. This mentality that actually most people love us and enjoy our games. They still pay for them and they play them, and a large majority of people don't complain. So obviously the people that do complain are not the minority. Equating this in this way is just incredibly misguided. For starters, that vocal minority is starting to change a lot. Social media keeps growing, and more people tune in to things like these videos. They tune in to news, they tune into podcasts, and they get a better feeling of things and want to make their voices heard. And if there is, and I believe that this is the case here, a pretty sizable vocal minority, there is probably a silent majority that supports that message. And probably it's growing to be similar to the size of people that just buy the games and don't think about it. But he continues, what is even more revolting is coming on LinkedIn and seeing the same comments from people within the industry. I'm going to talk about that. On top of exposing yourself as a clearly non-decent human being, you are affecting thousands of employees that are already impacted by all the hate despite doing their best to deliver incredible experiences. And there is a lot going on in this little blurb that is highly manipulative and that really deserves to be called out. So let's go in order. The fact that there are people within the industry that are celebrating the failure of a company like Ubisoft should be very telling. There are a lot of people within the industry that are very unhappy with how things are going, with what practices are being implemented in workplaces, in how employees are treated, in how departments are divvied up, in how the directions for games are decided, and in the work that they have to do. A lot of people want video games to be different, including people who work on them and have been forced into a lot of different corporate structures that they never wanted to and that place a lot of limitations onto them. And I receive DMs and emails from developers from many different places telling me that they are sick and tired, that what I'm saying doesn't even scratch the surface, that we have no idea just how out of touch directors are, how little they understand of the work that actually goes into making a video game, and how the things that they demand be put in it actively harm a game and stifle creativity and lead to terrible working conditions, all conducted by madmen. The people that are within the industry celebrating this failure is because they believe it's going to lead to a better tomorrow, to better games in the future, and to better things for people making them. But what really pisses me off is the idea that he says that all of this negativity is directly affecting thousands of employees that are impacted by this, and kind of implying that these people who are going to lose their jobs in many cases are all victims, and that people are mean and evil and have no empathy. And the reality of this could not be farther from the truth. Sure, there are probably some people who want everybody to lose their jobs. There's people out there saying horrible things, but that's just true about everything all of the time. Most people that are celebrating the downfall of Ubisoft are doing so because they're fed up, they're tired, they've grown to hate this company for the way that they treat their IP, the things that they would love to see, for how they continue to gaslight them to try and take their money in exchange for subpar products. They want to see better and they want to receive better as customers, and all they see is that it keeps getting worse and worse, and they just want that to change. Just because most people don't put a qualifying statement of, I feel bad for the people who don't deserve to lose their jobs that are going to lose it in this process, doesn't mean they don't have empathy towards that. It's very simply that sometimes people just don't add the qualifying statements when they just say stuff on Twitter. Most human beings have empathy for people who have drive and passion, unfortunately losing their jobs. But when looking at the big picture, this is a good thing, and you can't try and convince me that, oh, woe is you, this is actually so bad. Oh, how could it be that a company does a subpar job for 10 years and they reap the consequences, and we're supposed to think, oh no, the best way that this world would work would be if they continue to make subpar products and somehow get rewarded for it. And there's two layers of manipulation going on here. Not only are gamers mean and evil and have no empathy, not only are we non-decent human beings, but it also implies that everybody at Ubisoft is amazing. Obviously, this company is failing because there's a lot of out-of-touch directors, a lot of corporate bureaucracy, a lot of terrible management structures that lead to projects failing and underperforming and all of these negative things. There are people there who do not deserve the positions they have. There are probably, like in any other company, seat warmers. There's people that exist to fill in at the table. Ubisoft is basically the poster child for corporate bloat at this point. And in this little manipulative blurb, it's painting it out as if it's not their fault that people are going to lose their jobs. And that they, most of them, people like the man posting this, are going to walk away unscathed. And they have the audacity to post this and use their employees and their very real tragedy, their very real job losses as a shield. So here's a very real question. Where is the empathy from Ubisoft and all of the terrible decisions that they've made towards their employees? If you cared about them, you would have done everything to avoid this sort of situation. You can't just claim from a director's perspective that this has nothing to do with me. There are tons of people that very probably joined Ubisoft bright-eyed and naive, wishing that they could work on Splinter Cell, or on Rayman 4, or on Beyond Good and Evil 2, or on some new cool project, and instead were met with a corporate stonewall of no, shut up and do your job, and that kept their heads low, holding on to their passion for video games, and now, because of the decisions that people at the top have made, are going to lose their jobs. I have empathy for them, but I do not have empathy for the people at the top, and I do not have empathy for the company itself failing, because these sorts of things need to be weeded out of the industry. But of course, we have just a little bit left of this post, as he says, how can you wish a company to fail simply because they do not cater to you, or that the product does not please you is beyond me. And this is just a tone-deaf, completely out-of-touch statement. How can people wish for a company that makes products in exchange for money, and that those products are subpar, that they don't please them, and they do this repeatedly for over 10 years, and they think that this needs a change? Wow, man. It almost feels like you're angry that people are using their brains. But the real kicker is the ending here of we are all on the same boat. Please, please, please stop spreading hate. We should all uplift each other instead of bringing each other down. And what Sabrina Carpenter over here doesn't understand is that they are not on the same boat. A monetization director is not on the same boat as the employees at the lower levels that are actually suffering this. A monetization director is not on the same boat as gamers. I've dug around a lot on this, and a part of me still wishes for me to be wrong and for this to be a hoax. And this isn't real, because it's just so sad. Video games are an incredibly beautiful combination of technology, business, and art and creativity. And one of the coolest parts about video games is that the line of communication has always been very clear. If they make a great game that we want to play, we will happily pay for it and play it. We will be so excited to do that. And at some point in the last 6 or 7 years, that communication has been broken. And a lot of companies in the chase for profit have forgotten that the profit comes when you make things that people want to buy. And the way that we get back on track, the way that we focus back on what matters, is by making our voices heard. And of course, in that, there's going to be some not so nice voices. But we cannot let these people try and gaslight us. We can't let them pretend that everybody who wants video games to get better are evil, non-decent human beings. Sorry, I'm really angry at this post, but let's talk about the future. What could happen to Ubisoft? Well, there's many different ways that all of this could go down. And this is really interesting because I think Tencent, for those of you who know it, being a Chinese mega corporation, a multinational conglomerate, and a holding company that has a lot of investments all across video games, basically has a hand in every single pie. And listen, there's no real good way of sugarcoating this, so here we go. Tencent is linked to a lot of human rights violations. It's linked to some shady business practices, a lot of bad stuff regarding privacy, and especially within China, they are very negatively regarded since they have control of like way too much. And when I say that they have fingers in a lot of pies, I really do mean that. These guys have like 14% of From Software, 35% of Shift Up, including Stellar Blade, 5% in game science recently for Black Myth Wukong, 25% in Larian for Baldur's Gate 3. They invest wherever they smell money. And these guys are accumulating power like crazy. But this is where it gets really complicated. Ubisoft needs to change. They are so deep in the hole that there is no other option. It's either a hostile takeover or somebody buys it and takes it private. So really the only sliver of hope here is that somehow buying them out from the Guillemot family plus Tencent would allow some sort of split where the Guillemot family can keep a lot of the important stuff regarding Ubisoft in check, and ideally Tencent comes in from a business perspective, not to implement or to work with a lot of the terrible things we associate with them, but instead to just restructure and give that outside perspective that Ubisoft desperately needs. They can't be allowed to continue with, we conducted an internal investigation and found out that there was no wrongdoing from our part. There needs to be a dramatic change because that is just how deeply this company is hurt at the moment, beyond recovery. And if they don't go private with something like Tencent plus the Guillemot family, or ideally the Guillemot family plus someone else, I guess, choosing between lesser evils at that point, I say, as if the Guillemot family has proven to not be an evil. But if it isn't that, it's just going to be a hostile takeover or the vultures circling above. And it reminds me a lot of the situation with Embracer Group in 2001, where people were naively very happy that Embracer was buying things up like all of the Crystal Dynamics IP, like Tomb Raider and Deus Ex and Soul Reaver. People thought that they were going to bring back Legacy of Kain. And look how Embracer turned out, which, by the way, didn't hear any of those naive journalists celebrating Embracer come back years later to say, ooh, we were wrong. Accountability really is dead. And at this point, I don't know what's worse. If all of the IP being stripped away and sold off and just being treated like that, like they're being picked up by vultures, or having a gigantic mega corporation that kind of really does personify the idea of an evil megacorp coming in to take care of Ubisoft and its IP. The truth is, though, that Ubisoft is in such a dire state that it's kind of difficult to imagine anything really being worse beyond it disappearing. Like, it really is a question of if the juice is worth the squeeze, but at this point with Ubisoft, like, there is no juice left. They would need to build up again in order to squeeze them dry again. Do not forget that we live in the reality where Sam Fisher was relegated as a gacha drop in a tactical mobile game. Which, that isn't me being hopeful, but it is me reminding you that there is somewhere a chance that Ubisoft does come back from this, that the restructuring happens, that within those 30 to 40% layoffs at the company, they get rid of the bloat, they focus on now instead of their 10-year plan or whatever, and they start pumping out good games, that at some point they realize once again that making good games leads to sales. And I care deeply about this, not just because of the IP that Ubisoft has abandoned, which is the first thing I would do, is I go into the vault of IP and find passionate people who want to work on them and be like, hey, here's Splinter Cell, have some fun, team. But because I really don't want AAA to die. I know that some people really want AAA to crash and burn, and that's not what I want. I think there's a very healthy division to be found within video games right now, within the indie scene, the AA scene, and the AAA. And for all of the incredible output that indies and AAs do of innovation, of passion, of games that remind us why we love games, AAA still has a place because these gigantic companies, with their just unfathomable resources, they have so much money, so much talent in them that goes just not used. They have the ability to acquire more talent, to go out there and really offer competitive salaries and good conditions for the best of the best to work on great games, and they have the resources, the money, the technology to really push video games forward in a way that nobody else can even imagine. And instead of doing that, instead of continuing to be at the forefront of innovation and making games that we love playing that nobody else can make, they are all obsessed with chasing the most amount of money, competing for the same live service pie in the middle, like it's some twisted version of the Hunger Games. And it turns out that the ones who suffer from that is us. I want AAA to realize that there is such a huge market out there for them to just make good games if they just listen to customers. If Ubisoft in some capacity is going to be a wake-up call for everybody, and even more, in a very twisted, potentially impossible reality, Ubisoft were able to make a comeback under new leadership, under whatever the circumstances may be, to come out and prove that they're back stronger by listening to customers, by bringing back the things that we want, and to find success. It would just be this glowing example that we could point at anytime one of the other big developers out there, big publishers, does something stupid. That would be great for us. Is it just like basically impossible? Yes. But I still believe in that dream. I still believe that the role of AAA in video games is to do the things that nobody else has the resources to do. So I know that a lot of you guys want them to fail, but I don't. I want them to change. I want them to wake up and give us what we deserve, to reestablish that beautiful line of communication between us, the customers, and them. The visionaries creating great things that we could have never imagined, but that we fall in love with. Will it ever happen? I don't know, but I'd like to believe that it's possible. And sure, some of you might call me naive, but I never thought Embracer was going to do anything good, so I guess I'm not that naive. I've been Mug, and I hope that this has clarified a lot of the situation, the things that could happen, and where Ubisoft is, because this is a really big deal. Like I said, it's kind of a blueprint for how failure can happen to these big companies and what mistakes to avoid. And if you did enjoy the video, leave a like. That helps the video reach more people. That helps the channel grow. We are almost at 50,000 subscribers, which is absolutely crazy, but it makes me very happy. Thank you all so much for your support, as well as thanking the members of the $1 patron wall, which are up there because they support me at the $1 tier, the only tier there is. But their support is very important, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. And if you want to join, the link is in the description below. And as always, go out there, enjoy some good video games, have a good time, because there's a ton of great video games despite all of this drama. Never forget that. And I'll see you again very soon.